The first time I met Admiral Harrington, I didn't know he was my boyfriend's father. I only knew him as the old man at the bus stop, the one I offered shelter to under my umbrella, as the rain came down in sheets. And when he looked at me and whispered, "Wait, you're Natalia," something in his voice froze the air between us. For a second the world went silent except for the patter of rain. I remember blinking, confused, trying to place his face. I didn't know him, and yet he said my name like he'd known me all his life. That moment, the wet pavement, the gray sky, the stranger who somehow knew me, was how everything began. But to understand how it ended, you'd have to know who I was before that day. I was Captain Natalia Reed, U.S. Marine Corps, 31 years old, and proud of it. I'd spent most of my 20s deployed supply coordination logistics operations, disaster relief after hurricanes that tore through the Gulf. My friends used to joke that I could build a field base out of duct tape and grit. I never married, never even took long vacations. The Corps was my rhythm, my refuge, and my reason. And then, about a year ago, I met Ethan Harrington at a charity event for veterans in Norfolk. He wasn't military, he was all business, crisp suit, soft voice, steady smile. He listened more than he spoke, and he made me laugh, which after years of ration packs and deployments felt like a miracle. We started seeing each other whenever I was in town. Before long, he was talking about forever. The problem wasn't Ethan, it was his parents. His mother, Margaret, came from old Virginia money. His father, Admiral William Harrington, was a retired naval commander turned shipyard magnate. Together they lived in a world of silk tablecloths, private golf clubs, and silver spoons. And me, I was the daughter of a small-town auto mechanic from Roanoke, who'd served 2 tours in the Marines before dying in a training accident when I was 14. When Ethan told his parents he was dating a Marine, they smiled politely. When he added that I was planning to make a career out of it, their smiles vanished. "They're not our kind of people," his mother had reportedly told him. His father said nothing, but silence can cut deeper than any word. Still, Ethan insisted they'd come around once they met me. He arranged a dinner, just a quiet evening at the family home, he said. I wanted to believe him. That Saturday afternoon, the sky turned steel gray before I even left the base. By the time I reached the city line, it was raining hard enough to blur the stoplights. Traffic crawled, wipers fought uselessly, and I could already feel my uniform blouse sticking to my skin. I parked 3 blocks away from the Harrington mansion, half by choice, half because the street was lined with high-end cars that made my old Honda Civic look like a toy soldier. I grabbed my umbrella, the one I carried everywhere, a dull green government-issue one from my logistics days. As I started walking, I spotted him, an old man in a long brown coat, standing under the awning of a bus stop, rain pooling at his feet. He wasn't holding an umbrella, just a folded newspaper gone limp in the rain. Something about the way he stood, straight-backed hands clasped behind him, reminded me of the officers I used to salute. Instinct kicked in. I stopped beside him and tilted the umbrella toward his side. "Sir, you'll get soaked if you stay there," I said. He turned his head, surprised, then smiled faintly. "Thank you, young lady. Not many people stop these days." "It's no trouble," I replied. "I'm headed a few blocks up." He chuckled, voice gravelly but calm. And here I thought Marines only moved in formation. I laughed softly. Old habits die hard. We stood like that for a while, sharing the narrow shelter as cars hissed past. The rain was steady but not cruel. It had that Virginia smell, wet pavement, salt air, and the faint memory of pine. Then he asked, "Where are you headed, young lady?" I hesitated. "The Harrington residence. I'm meeting my boyfriend's parents." The man's face changed. The smile vanished. He blinked once slowly, as though trying to process something. Then he looked at me, not at me, but through me. His voice dropped barely above the rain. "Wait, you're Natalia." I froze. "Yes, sir," I said carefully. "Do I know you?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes softened, then hardened again like waves pulling back before a storm. "Have a good evening, Captain," he murmured almost to himself. Then he stepped out from under the umbrella and walked away into the rain. I watched him go, water soaking the back of his coat until it turned nearly black. Something about his tone left me uneasy, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I was already late. By the time I reached the gate, the rain had calmed to a drizzle. The Harrington mansion loomed ahead, white columns, stone lions, and a driveway long enough to land a small aircraft. I took a deep breath, straightened my damp uniform, and told myself, "You've briefed generals and survived sandstorms. You can handle dinner with one rich family." Still that man's voice haunted me. "Wait, you're Natalia. How did he know my name? Why did he sound so disappointed?" I didn't know then that the answer would change everything: my relationship, my faith in what people call class, and even my understanding of honor itself. Sometimes life doesn't hand you battles. It hands you mirrors. And that night I was about to see exactly what kind of person I really was. When the butler opened the door, I realized how out of place I looked. My uniform was damp, my shoes squeaked on the marble floor, and my hair, once neatly pinned, had loosened under the rain. The foyer smelled like polished wood and expensive silence. Every step echoed like the house itself was judging me. Ethan appeared at the top of the staircase, all warmth and relief. "Natalia," he said, jogging down and taking my umbrella. I was starting to worry. "You okay?" I smiled faintly, just a little wet. Traffic was slow. He kissed my cheek, gentle, unbothered by my soaked sleeve. "Come on." Mom's setting the table. I followed him through a corridor lined with portraits, uniformed men, pearls, and medals gleaming under soft lights. A legacy on display. When we entered the dining room, his mother stood by a long oak table arranging silverware with military precision. She didn't look up right away. When she did, her eyes moved over me once like a scanner and stopped just short of polite. "Oh," she said, smiling thinly. "You made it." "I did, ma'am. Thank you for having me." "Of course." Her voice was sweet and distant, like an automated recording. "Ethan, dear, maybe show Natalia where she can freshen up. Her uniform must be uncomfortable after the rain." "I'm fine," I said quickly. "I'd rather stay as I am." She hesitated, lips pressed together. "If you're sure." It was the kind of "if you're sure" that meant you shouldn't be. Ethan poured wine. "Dad should be home any minute. He got caught up at the yard." I tried to sound casual. "Your father still works retired, technically," Margaret said, taking her seat. "But the shipyard is his pride. He built it from the ground up after leaving the Navy." I nodded. "That's impressive." She smiled again, tight polished. "He believes in discipline. You must understand that." "I do, ma'am," I said. "It's kind of a shared language." Her eyebrow twitched. "Ah, yes, Marines." It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Like the word tasted bitter. Dinner began with small talk that had sharp edges. Ethan tried to keep things light: stories about our trip to Charleston, a stray dog I'd helped find a home. Margaret listened occasionally, glancing at my ribbons. "Do you plan to stay in the military?" she asked suddenly. "Yes, ma'am. I'm career." "I see." She tilted her glass. "And after that?" "After that, I'll probably teach logistics or maybe work in humanitarian coordination." Her lips curved faintly. "So, not the corporate type." Ethan cut in. "Mom." She waved a delicate hand. "I'm only asking. It's important for a woman to think about stability." "Service can be stable," I said gently, "if your foundation's strong." She smiled again, the way people smile when they've lost interest. "Of course." I looked down at my plate and told myself to breathe. Years in uniform had trained me to absorb worse: shouting officers, emergencies, life or death calls. But polite cruelty, that was a battlefield of its own. Halfway through dinner, the door opened. I turned and my breath caught. The old man from the bus stop stood there, dry and calm, in a navy blue blazer. "William," Margaret exclaimed, "we were just talking about you." He froze when he saw me. For one brief second, the sound of rain returned to my ears, even though it wasn't raining anymore. Ethan stood. "Dad, this is Natalia Reed." "I know who she is," Admiral Harrington said quietly. The room fell silent. He set his coat on the rack and walked slowly to his seat at the head of the table. I stood instinctively, as Marines do when a superior enters. Old habits. He gave me a curt nod. "Captain Reed," he said evenly. "Yes, sir," I replied. Margaret looked between us, confused. "You've met briefly," he said. "At the bus stop." Her eyes widened. "At the bus stop." He said nothing more. Ethan, oblivious to the tension, chuckled nervously. Small world, huh? No one laughed. The meal continued in awkward silence. The Admiral barely spoke. When he did, it was only to ask for the salt or refill his glass. I could feel his eyes on me studying, measuring the way officers look at new recruits. Margaret, sensing something she didn't understand, doubled down on civility. "So, Captain," she began, "what does your family do?" "My father was a Marine," I said. "He ran a small repair shop after he retired." Her smile faltered. "Oh, manual labor." "Yes, ma'am. He believed in fixing things." The Admiral's fork stopped mid-air, his jaw clenched. He muttered, "So did I." Margaret frowned. "William?" He shook his head. Nothing. Ethan tried to steer the topic elsewhere. "Dad, did you hear Natalia coordinated a supply run after the last hurricane? Her unit saved 3 coastal towns from running out of food." I shot him a look. He was trying to help, but bragging wasn't my thing. The Admiral leaned back. "Yes, I read the commendation." "You?" "Read it," I asked quietly. His eyes narrowed, unreadable. "I review every logistics report from that district. Old habit." For a moment I thought I saw something soften behind his stare. Then it vanished. He set down his fork and stood. "Excuse me." Margaret blinked. "William, we haven't finished." He walked out. The echo of his steps filled the hall. No one spoke for nearly a full minute. Finally, Margaret sighed. "He's been distant lately." Ethan rubbed my hand under the table. "Don't take it personally." But I did. Because something about that look, something buried deep in his silence, told me there was more to this dinner than disapproval. It wasn't just that he hated me. It was that he recognized me from somewhere I couldn't remember. Later that night, when Ethan drove me back to my car, the storm clouds had drifted out to sea. The streets were still wet, glimmering in the streetlights. He reached for my hand. "They'll come around. Just give it time." I forced a smile. "Sure." But as I stared at the reflection of the mansion in the puddles, all I could hear was that voice in the rain. "Wait. You're Natalia." And now his silence at dinner said everything that voice hadn't. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face again, the rainwater glistening on his coat, the shock in his eyes when I'd said the address, the tremor in his voice when he'd whispered my name. I kept asking myself, how did a retired admiral know a Marine captain he'd never met? By sunrise, I gave up on sleep and did what Marines do best. I made coffee strong enough to peel paint and went for a run along the harbor. The tide was high, the air smelled of salt and diesel, and gulls screamed overhead like drill sergeants. It should have cleared my head. It didn't. Ethan called around 9. "Morning, Captain," he said playfully. "You alive barely." He sighed. "Look, last night was rough. My parents can be difficult. But it'll get better. Your dad didn't say 10 words to me. He's always like that. Military type. Doesn't show emotion. I've served under men like him," I said quietly. "They show emotion. Just not the kind you want to see." He chuckled uneasily. "He's not angry at you. Maybe he's just surprised. Surprised about what I don't know. Maybe because you remind him of someone. He's been acting strange lately. Strange how withdrawn. He spends hours going through old Navy reports even though he's retired, like he's looking for something he lost." The words lodged in my chest. Old Navy reports. My name, recognition. I didn't want to say it out loud, but a memory stirred a disaster 3 years earlier. A Navy convoy off the Florida coast had nearly gone under during a supply operation after Hurricane Delilah. My Marine unit had been redirected to assist. I'd worked 72 hours straight coordinating emergency shipments and rerouting cargo from a damaged naval vessel called the Florence May. I never met the commanding officer, but I remembered the name on the manifest: Rear Admiral William Harrington. The thought hit like cold surf. Could that be him? I spent the morning at the base trying to focus on reports, but my mind wandered. By noon, I decided to stop wondering and ask. I called the Admiral's office. The line went straight to voicemail, so I wrote a message, short, respectful, professional. "Admiral Harrington, this is Captain Natalia Reed. I'd appreciate a brief meeting whenever convenient regarding last night. Respectfully, Captain Reed. I almost deleted it 3 times before pressing send. That evening he replied, Captain Reed, 1800 hours, Harrington Shipyard main office, bring your credentials. The precision of the message told me everything. This wasn't a social chat. At 6 sharp I pulled into the shipyard parking lot, acres of cranes and dry docks gleaming under industrial lights. A flag flapped lazily above the main building, the kind of oversized flag that looks like it's seen storms and survived them. Inside the Admiral's office was orderly enough to make a Marine blush-framed citations a model destroyer on his desk, family photos arranged by height. He stood by the window when I entered, hands clasped behind him, profile stern against the sunset. Captain Reed, he said without turning. Sir, I saluted out of habit. At ease. He finally faced me. You requested this meeting. Yes, sir. I just wanted to clear the air. He nodded, slow and deliberate. You're a logistics officer, correct? Yes, sir. 3rd Marine Logistics Group. He leaned against his desk, eyes sharp. Do you know how many reports I've signed with your name on them? I can't say that I do, sir. I do, he said. Dozens. Supply coordination, emergency deployment, the Florence May relief convoy. You saved that mission. My throat went dry. You were commanding that fleet. He nodded once. And you were the one who rerouted those fuel lines before the explosion. You saved 50 sailors, including me. I blinked. I didn't know that, sir. We just did our job. Most people would have made sure I did know. They'd have milked it for every promotion they could find. With respect, sir, that's not how Marines think. He studied me for a long time. The silence grew heavy. Finally he said, You remind me of my daughter. I froze. Your daughter. He looked past me, voice roughening. She was a Marine. Died in training 8 years ago. Her name was Allison, same age as you are now. My chest tightened. I'm sorry, sir. He nodded absently. So am I. He turned away again, staring out the window at the cranes. When you said that address last night, it hit me like a shell. For a second I thought maybe... He didn't finish. I understand, I said quietly. But sir, I didn't mean to cause discomfort. He waved it off. No, Captain. You didn't. My discomfort's been there for years. We stood in silence. The hum of the shipyard filled the room, steel against windmen shouting orders, the rhythm of work and regret. Then he said, You're seeing my son. Yes, sir. Do you love him? I do. He met my eyes. Then don't let him think less of his country just because his father forgot what honor looks like. That line stunned me. It wasn't an apology, but it was something close. He walked around his desk and opened a drawer. From it he pulled a folded commendation letter, my own, the one I'd written for the Florence May mission years ago. He handed it to me. I kept it, he said, to remind myself that some people still do the right thing when no one's watching. I took the paper carefully. Thank you, sir. He nodded. You have dinner with my family again tomorrow. My request. Sir, I'll handle my wife. He dismissed me with a simple gesture. As I walked out, I felt a weight shift, not gone, but lighter somehow. That night, I sat in my car, the paper in my lap, the lights of the shipyard flickering like distant stars. I wasn't sure if this was reconciliation or the beginning of another battle, but for the first time since the rain, I felt like I understood the weight behind my own name. The next evening, I ironed my marine dress blues so sharply that the creases could have cut glass. I told myself it wasn't to impress the Admiral or his wife. It was about respect for the uniform for the evening for myself. Still, my stomach twisted the whole drive there. I wasn't nervous for combat zones anymore, but dinner tables, that was another story. The Harrington home looked different in daylight, less like a fortress, more like an old monument trying to stay proud. When I parked, I saw the Admiral outside near the garden speaking to the groundskeeper. He spotted me, lifted a hand in greeting, small but genuine. It was the first time I'd seen him smile. Margaret opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes flicked to my uniform and then back to my face. Oh, you're... early, she said, voice cautious. Yes, ma'am. The Admiral asked me to come by before dinner. Her jaw tensed slightly at his title. Of course he did. Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish and old books. The Admiral was waiting in the study jacket off reading glasses on. He rose when I entered, formal as ever. "Captain Reed," he said, nodding. "Sir, thank you for coming." He gestured for me to sit. Margaret lingered by the doorway, suspicious but silent. "I wanted to clear the air," he said. "About last night." "Sir, there's nothing to apologize for." He raised a hand. "Maybe not. But I owe you the truth." He looked at his wife. "Margaret, would you excuse us?" Her smile was brittle. "If I must." She left, closing the door quietly. The Admiral's shoulders sank as if the air had gotten heavier. "When I recognized your name, it brought back a memory I've avoided for years," he began. "My daughter Allison died in a Marine training accident. She was your age. Same quiet fire in her eyes. After that, I told myself I'd never let another Marine into this house again. Too many ghosts already." I sat still, the silence thick as the air before a storm. He continued, voice trembling just slightly. "But when I read your name in those reports, I couldn't stop. You saved people, Captain. You saved my men. I admired you long before I knew you'd be standing in my foyer." I swallowed hard. "Sir, I don't deserve that kind of praise. I just did my duty." He chuckled dryly. "That's exactly what my daughter used to say." His eyes softened for a brief second, then hardened again like he was afraid of showing too much. "Ethan doesn't know any of this," he said. "He just thinks I disapprove because you're military. Truth is, I disapprove because you remind me what I lost." That hit like a gut punch. "I didn't mean to," I know, he interrupted gently. "You don't have to apologize for being alive." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking clock filled the space where grief lived. Dinner that night was smaller, just the four of us, no guests, no polished formalities. Ethan looked relieved. Margaret looked like she was sitting on broken glass. Conversation tiptoed around ordinary things, weather, traffic, the price of gas. Then Margaret said, "I hear you've been promoted, Captain. Congratulations." "Thank you, ma'am," I said cautiously. She smiled tightly. "Though I do wonder, doesn't rank make it hard for a woman to have a family?" The Admiral's fork froze mid-air. Ethan's jaw tightened. I kept my voice steady. "Sometimes it does, but honor and love don't always follow the same schedule." Margaret tilted her head. "Such poetic answers. I suppose the military trains that too." "Margaret," the Admiral said quietly, "that's enough." She blinked, offended. "I was just making conversation." He set down his fork. "At another Marine's expense, not in my house." The air went cold. She stared at him, then at me, as if trying to find the crack that gave her husband's loyalty away. I wanted to ease the tension, so I changed the subject. "Your garden's beautiful, ma'am, the roses especially." Her voice softened just a little. "Thank you. William planted those for our daughter." The Admiral looked down. "Allison loved yellow roses." The table fell silent again. I could feel their pain like static in the air, the kind of ache that never truly heals. After dinner, Margaret excused herself early, muttering something about a phone call. Ethan walked me to the porch. The night air smelled like wet grass and salt. "She's not bad," he said softly. "Just proud." "I know," I said. "Pride's heavy, hard to put down." He smiled. "You always sound like you're teaching me something. Maybe I am." He took my hand. "I love you, Natalia. I love you too." Behind the curtains, I could see the Admiral watching us, expression unreadable. He turned away when our eyes met, but I knew he'd seen the truth between us. Before I left, the Admiral followed me out to the porch. "I owe you another apology," he said. "Sir, for letting pride make me forget gratitude." "You don't owe me anything, Admiral." He gave a small, weary smile. "Maybe not. But I want to give it anyway." He extended his hand. I shook it firm, respectful. "Thank you for sharing your daughter's story," I said. "She'd be proud of you." He looked at the stars. "Maybe one day I'll believe that." I drove away with the image of him still standing there, an old officer surrounded by ghosts, finally learning to salute the living. When I got home, I hung my uniform neatly, then sat on the bed in silence. Some people spend their lives chasing medals or promotions. But sometimes the hardest victory is forgiving the people who don't know how to love you until it's almost too late. I didn't know it yet, But that dinner had cracked something open inside the Harringtons. Pride, grief, resentment, all the armor that had kept them safe from feeling. And cracks, as I've learned, are how light gets in. The next morning I was on base reviewing deployment schedules when my phone buzzed nonstop. 3 calls, all from Ethan. When I finally answered, his voice was sharp with anger. "Natalia, what did you say to my father last night?" My stomach dropped. "Why? What happened?" He called a family meeting. Told my mother I've been blind. Said he misjudged you. She's furious. I exhaled slowly. "Ethan, I didn't say anything. He talked about his daughter. That's all. He hasn't mentioned Allison in years. He said softer now. Whatever you did." It shook something in him. "I didn't do anything special," I replied. "Maybe he just remembered what it means to respect someone." He paused, and I could hear the wind through his car window. "Can you come over tonight? Please." When I arrived, the tension was thick enough to taste. Margaret sat rigidly in the living room, pearls gleaming like small pieces of armor. The Admiral stood near the fireplace, hands behind his back, posture as straight as if he were still on deck. Ethan paced his tie half undone. Captain Reed, the Admiral, greeted formally. "Sir." Margaret didn't look up. "You're early. Again." Ethan cleared his throat. "We're all here. Can we please talk like normal people?" His mother's voice cut through the air. "Define normal, Ethan. Is it normal for my husband to embarrass me at dinner, to defend someone he barely knows?" "She's not just someone," the Admiral said quietly. Margaret spun toward him. "Oh, then who is she?" He took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the flames. "She's the Marine who saved my command 3 years ago. Without her, 50 men would be dead, including me." The room went silent. Margaret blinked, confusion overtaking anger. "What are you talking about, the Florence?" "May," he said. "Hurricane Delilah. Supply convoy failure. Her name was on every logistics report. I read them a dozen times and never once thanked her." I tried to speak, but my throat was tight. "Sir, that was a team effort," he raised a hand. "Don't. I've led enough teams to know leadership when I see it." Margaret's voice faltered. "William? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to admit that the woman I dismissed for her background had more honor than I showed in 20 years. The confession hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Ethan stepped closer, eyes bright. "Dad," but the Admiral wasn't finished. He turned to me. "You told me last night that pride is heavy. You were right. I've carried mine for too long." Margaret's face flushed. "And what of our family's dignity? You'd throw it away to make a scene." He looked at her with quiet steel. "Dignity isn't something you wear to dinner, Margaret. It's something you show to people who've earned it." Her lips parted, but no words came out. The argument unfolded like slow fire, polite, controlled, but deadly honest. For every accusation she made, he answered with calm truth. For every bitter word, Ethan winced like a son torn between love and shame. Finally, Margaret stood. "I won't sit here and be lectured in my own home." "Then stand," the Admiral said, voice low but commanding. "But listen while you do. You once told me you'd never have a Marine in this family. Well, that's already happened. She saved our lives before we even met her." Margaret's eyes flicked toward me, a look that wasn't hatred anymore but disbelief. I could have left then, but something inside me wouldn't let me. "Ma'am," I said softly, "I know this is uncomfortable. I didn't mean to come between your family. I just came here to meet you honestly. Whatever you think of me, I'll respect it." She stared for a long time, then almost imperceptibly her shoulders dropped. "You speak like my daughter used to." The Admiral blinked. "Margaret." "She would have been your age," she said quietly, "always doing things her own way, always bringing home stray dogs and people." Tears gathered in her eyes before she looked away. "Dinner is in an hour," she whispered. "I'll set the table." And just like that, she walked out, heels clicking like punctuation marks on forgiveness. After she left, the Admiral turned to me. "I don't expect gratitude," he said. "But I do owe you one thing, a proper salute." He stepped back, straightened, and raised his hand. The sight of a man like him saluting me nearly broke my composure. I returned the gesture. With respect, sir, you don't owe me that. He lowered his hand. Maybe not, but I needed to remember what it felt like. Ethan came up behind me, resting a hand on my shoulder. You realize you just caused a family revolution, right? I smiled faintly. Wouldn't be my first. He laughed quietly, tension melting. You're amazing, you know that. Hardly, I said. I just told the truth. The Admiral nodded almost to himself. That's exactly why it mattered. Dinner that night was quiet but different. Margaret didn't snipe or sigh. She listened, asked questions, small ones, cautious, human. By the time dessert came, the rain had started again outside. The Admiral looked at me across the table and said, Captain Reed, if you ever consider leaving the service, the shipyard could use someone like you. Margaret added softly, and maybe our family too. I smiled, humbled. Thank you, ma'am, but for now the Corps still needs me. The Admiral grinned. So did I once. We all laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was finally safe too. When I left that night, Ethan walked me to my car. The rain was steady, familiar, the same kind that had started everything. He opened his umbrella and held it over both of us. Funny, he said. A year ago you said you didn't believe in destiny. I still don't, I said, smiling. But I believe in weather. He chuckled, and honor, I nodded, that too. As he leaned in to kiss me, lightning flashed across the clouds, a brief flare of brightness against all that gray. Some storms don't destroy, some storms wash things clean. A week later I was back at the base. Life was supposed to return to normal early PT coffee that tasted like rust, endless paperwork. But something had changed. Every time I saluted the flag, I thought of Admiral Harrington standing in his living room saluting me. Still, I didn't know what to do with the feeling that lingered afterward, something between gratitude and unfinished business. That afternoon, my CO called me into his office. Captain Reed, he said, waving a folder. You've got visitors. One Admiral William Harrington, retired. I blinked. He's here, my CO confirmed. And he's waiting outside my door looking like he still runs the Navy. Try not to make him cry. When I stepped out, the Admiral was standing at parade rest in full dress uniform. His chest glittered with ribbons and stars, but his expression was humble, almost uneasy. He straightened when he saw me. Captain Reed. Sir. I didn't come for ceremony, he said. I came for truth. He handed me a folder older than most on base. Its edges were worn, the paper yellowed. These are copies of the Florence May mission files, he said. After you left the Navy's joint operation, I rewrote the report. Took credit for the reroute order. I froze. Sir, why are you telling me this now? Because it was wrong. You saved 50 men. I was supposed to acknowledge you. Instead, I let the system bury your name because it made me uncomfortable that someone younger, someone outside my chain had saved me. I didn't know what to say. He kept going, voice cracking slightly. I've lived long enough to know that honor isn't what people write on plaques. It's what they admit when no one's clapping. He looked straight into my eyes. I came here to correct the record. I opened the folder. On top was a new commendation draft signed and dated by him. My name was listed first. Sir, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. We walked down to the training field. Recruits were running drills, shouting cadence through the humid Virginia air. When they saw him, they straightened immediately, legend meeting reality. The Admiral faced me, captain front and center. I obeyed, standing tall, unsure what was happening. He spoke loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Marines, this officer saved my command 3 years ago. I never gave her the recognition she earned. So today I correct that. He turned to me and saluted, crisp, perfect, every inch of him trembling with sincerity. For a second no one moved. Then slowly the entire training field saluted too. I returned it, jaw tight, heart hammering. When he lowered his hand, he said quietly, "That's for my men. The apology is for me." We went to the officers' lounge afterward. The mood had shifted, less formal, more human. He took off his hat and looked at it like it carried the weight of decades. I read your service record again last night, he said. It's impressive. I just try to do my job. He smiled faintly. That's what I told myself for 40 years. But sometimes doing your job means admitting when you failed someone. He took a slow sip of coffee. I want you to understand something, Captain. My daughter's death, it made me cold. I thought if I controlled everything I could keep loss from coming again. That's why I hated you before I met you, because you were what I couldn't protect her to become. My throat tightened. Sir, you don't owe me your story. He shook his head. I owe you the truth. He placed his wedding ring on the table for a moment, tracing its edge. Margaret and I stopped talking about Allison years ago. We built this house full of rules instead of memories. You cracked it open. I don't know how, but you did. Maybe because I'm a Marine, I said softly. We don't run from storms, we walk through them. He chuckled. Then maybe that's what I need to learn to do. Before he left, he said, my wife and I are hosting a dinner next week. Small, family only. You'll be there? Sir, that's an order, Captain. I smiled. Yes, sir. As he walked out, I caught the sunlight glinting off his ribbons. They didn't look like decorations anymore, they looked like reminders. That night I sat by the harbor again, watching the water ripple under the moonlight. Somewhere behind me the shipyard cranes loomed like old sentinels. I thought about the first time I'd seen him, that rain-soaked stranger at the bus stop, and how much had changed in just a few weeks. He wasn't the same man, and if I was honest, neither was I. It's strange how easily bitterness can disguise itself as strength. It's even stranger how forgiveness can sneak up on you in the form of a quiet salute. A few days later, I received a message from the Navy Office of Records. The commendation update had been approved. My name finally would appear on the mission citation beside the Admiral's. No speeches, no ceremonies, just a small acknowledgement in a dusty archive that somehow felt like redemption. Ethan called that night, his voice light. Mom's cooking again. That's how I know miracles are real. I laughed. She must be in a good mood. She is. She wants to apologize to you herself. I froze. That's unexpected. He chuckled. You've had that effect on people lately. Maybe rain does that, I said. He paused. Rain. It washes off everything that doesn't matter. As I hung up, I looked at my reflection in the dark window, the uniform, the tired eyes, the faint smile. I thought of my father, of all the storms he'd walked through without losing his decency. Maybe that's what honor really is. Not medals or lineage, but the quiet grace of choosing to stay kind when life teaches you to harden. And maybe sharing an umbrella with a stranger in the rain was never random at all. The following Friday evening, I stood once again at the gates of the Harrington estate. But this time the air felt lighter, not like judgment, but invitation. The rain clouds that had been my shadow for weeks were gone. The sky glowed soft orange over the tree line, and the flag by the porch swayed gently in the evening breeze. I walked up the steps, bouquet in hand, not roses this time, but white lilies. My father used to say they were flowers that listen calm and forgiving. It felt right. Margaret opened the door herself. Her hair was pinned, her dress simple, her eyes warmer than I remembered. Captain Reed, she said softly. Or should I say, Natalia? Natalia's fine, I said, and you look beautiful, ma'am. She smiled, a real one this time, not the porcelain kind. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss it. Inside the house smelled of baked bread and roasted herbs. The table was set for 4 again, but gone were the silver candlesticks and crystal glasses. Tonight it looked like a home instead of a museum. Ethan came out of the kitchen wearing an apron. Don't say a word, he warned, grinning. Mom made me stir the gravy. I laughed. She's training you well. She's trying. Then the Admiral entered, no uniform, no medals, just a navy sweater and calm eyes. Captain Reed, he greeted. Admiral, I said automatically, then caught myself. Sorry, Mr. Harrington. He smiled. Let's stick with William tonight. Dinner started quietly, but not awkwardly. The rhythm was slower, easier. The kind of peace that only comes after everyone said the words they needed to say. At one point, Margaret cleared her throat. Natalia, I owe you something. You don't, ma'am. I do, she said firmly. When you first came here, I looked at you and saw everything I didn't understand. Discipline, duty, loss. I thought it made you hard. But now I see it made you decent. I swallowed hard. Thank you, that means a lot. She nodded. It should have come sooner. The Admiral reached over and placed his hand over hers. Pride, he said quietly. Is the armor we wear when we're afraid to be small. She looked at him surprised. You've been reading those leadership books again? He smiled. No. I've just been watching someone braver than me handle it better. His eyes flicked toward me. After dessert, we moved to the porch. The night was still, the crickets loud, the air carrying that familiar coastal scent of salt and pine. The Admiral lit a small lantern, the same one that used to sit in his study. He said, "This belonged to Allison. She used to take it when she camped in the backyard." Margaret's hand tightened around her teacup. He turned to me. "I'd like you to have it." I blinked. "Sir, I can't." "You can," he said. "Because you remind us that honor doesn't die when people do. It just changes form." He placed the lantern in my hands. The metal was cool, the glass worn. Inside, the candle flickered gently as if breathing. "Thank you," I said softly. "I'll take care of it. I know you will." Ethan leaned against the railing, smiling at the scene. "You know, when I told Mom I was dating a Marine, she said it'd never last." Margaret sighed. "And I was wrong." He laughed. "Don't worry, I've got it recorded." We all laughed, really laughed, the kind that fills the chest instead of breaking it. As I looked at them, the proud mother, the humbled father, the son who'd waited for peace to find its way home, I felt something deep settle in me. The kind of closure that doesn't need applause. Later that night, when I stood to leave, the Admiral walked me to my car. "Captain," he caught himself. "Natalia." "Yes, sir. You once told me Marines don't run from storms. They walk through them." "Yes." He nodded. "You walked through ours. Thank you for not turning away." I smiled. I didn't do anything special. I just held the umbrella. He chuckled softly. "You'd be surprised how few people do." He looked at the sky, calm, now starlit. "My daughter would have liked you." "I think she already does," I said gently. Driving away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The porch light was still on the three of them standing together, not perfect, not fixed, but whole. And on the passenger seat beside me sat the lantern, its little flame steady through the turns and shadows. I realized something then. Sometimes revenge doesn't mean making people suffer. Sometimes it means making them see. Because there are moments when life doesn't punish with loss, but redeems through grace. Moments when forgiveness becomes the sharpest kind of justice. Weeks later, I returned to the harbor on my day off. The rain began again, soft, rhythmic, familiar. I took out the umbrella I'd once shared with a stranger. The fabric was torn, now the metal bent, but it still opened. A young Marine recruit nearby forgot his cover and was getting drenched. I walked over and held the umbrella over him. He looked startled. "Ma'am, you don't have to." "Sure I do," I said. "It's tradition." He smiled grateful. "Thank you, Captain." I walked away, the rain pattering against the umbrella, the lantern's reflection faint in the puddles by my feet. And I thought maybe that's what honor really is. Not what you've earned, not what people say, just the quiet, stubborn decision to keep sharing your shelter even when you've already walked through the storm. If you've ever been misjudged or looked down on, don't harden. If someone once made you feel small, don't carry their bitterness, carry your kindness. It's heavier, yes, but it's the kind of weight that keeps your soul upright. Because one day someone will look at you, maybe in the rain, maybe at a bus stop, and realize that grace has been standing beside them all along. And when that happens, I hope you'll share your umbrella too.